Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. This YouTube channel is dedicated to helping you improve your game at Bannerlord through the use of tactics, but we're also going to be continuing to talk about the sister, so to speak, of tactics, and that is strategy. In this case, we'll also talk about pre-battle logistics. Logistics being the movement of your troops, which of course is essential, because if you're trying to get your troops in position to win a battle, it's important that you use every single advantage in that manner to do so. So we're going to give a demonstration of how you can traverse the long distances between castles in this case by separating your army into pieces, right? So in this scenario here, I have two different castles, it looks like, that are under siege, and I'm way down here at the bottom of the map, right? So what we're going to be doing is trying to get to these locations, one or the other. We're going to have to choose. We're going to get to them, make that strategic decision, and then get there as fast as we can, right? So the very first thing you're going to see me do is dismiss these army groups. I still want them to be in my army, but notice my speed now. It immediately shot up to 3.7, and now we're going to re-add these guys to the army, right? So initially our army speed was something like 2.6. It's still 3.7, and these units are effectively following behind us. Now you'll notice very briefly they're in a disorganized state, right? That's what that red star means. And so they're a little bit delayed behind my army group, but now look at the red star is gone and they are very quickly back up to speed. Now it might seem strange to you, right? We have these army groups chasing us and they're moving fast. Why not add them all together? Well, and the simple reason is that when you move your army together in a big mass, you move much slower. Okay, so another good example here. I have another member of this army group going to join the army. I'm simply going to disband her, pass her a little bit, and as soon as she's passed, I'm going to re-add her to the party. Again, she's right behind me, right? She's the caboose behind this train, but I don't want her actually in the army group. I want her behind. So I also have to decide whether or not I want to attack the castle up there. It's Ove Castle to the right, or the other castle. And the reason I'm going to Ove Castle instead of Kranarog is I have another army group near the other location, right? This is often going to be a decision you have to make. Do you go one way or the other? Do you help this location or another? And in this case, since I have this other army group, I was hoping that she would do exactly what she's doing, right? I was hoping that she would attack that location and defend that castle. Meanwhile, I can focus on the other castle, right? A lot of times in Bannerlord, in a campaign, you're going to be pressed for time. You're not going to have enough time to defend 3 different things all within like 1 or 2 game days, right? So that's why we're emphasizing the speed, right? By having these units follow behind us, we all move much faster. Once we're there, okay, so there's a huge force there of Khuzait. Once we're there, we will concentrate these forces, right? I will let them catch up a little bit, add these to my army group, right? Because I surely can't take on 2,200 with the 400. Over here, you see she was successful. This army group was successful defending there. So we're concentrating our forces again, and now we're going to enter this battle. Now, we saved a lot of time by separating the army group like that. This is something Napoleon did. He actually created something that's known as the corps system in the early 1800s during the Napoleonic War, and it revolutionized warfare. It basically sped up armies to the point where they could move quickly to the enemy separately, and then they would concentrate for battle once the battle was imminent. That's exactly what we're doing here. And in Bannerlord, time is of the essence. So we've got a nice battle against the Khuzait here. So I've had some comments on it that I've been using lower player damage. So for smaller battles like this, we're going to use normal player damage. It does make the battle more difficult, of course, but I understand that a lot of players want to play the game as pure as they can, so we'll do that here. So strategically, we're going to use 2 different approaches against the Khuzait here. I want to show a cavalry approach. In other words, if you're a mounted commander, and then at the middle section of the game, middle section of this battle, I'm actually going to shift to a foot soldier, because I understand a lot of players out there, fight on horseback the whole battle, and while others like to command and play the game from a foot troop type of style. So I'm going to try to show both in this battle. Now again, I've showed this before. One of the easiest things to do, and some people call it, sort of consider it cheesy or exploitive, on a map like this against the Khuzait, is simply to position at the very end, very back of the map. And the reason we're doing that, of course, is that this prevents their horse archers from getting behind us, right? The true Mongolian leader, the Genghis Khan type army were so devastating, not only for their movement of troops, they moved very fast because most of them were mounted, but they would circle an opponent and just shoot them full of arrows, right? With virtually no risk. They became master horsemen, and that just made them devastating to counter on the battlefield. So in this situation, all we're doing is we're positioning troops, the first and third. The first is infantry and the third is cavalry, at the very edge of the map. That way no cavalry, none of the horse archers can get behind us. Behind that first infantry, I'm leaving the 6th, which is the skirmishers, and then both archer groups, along with the 8th Corps. Now I'm going to do one other tactic here at the beginning. I'm going to drag this 2nd Cavalry with me, and we're actually going to try to divide the enemy as they approach us. The Khuzait force is even more deadly when it uses combined concentrated firepower, right? When it attacks with infantry, archers, heavy horse, and horse archers. So what we're actually doing here is a little bit of the old Caesar routine. We're doing some divide and conquer here. So my 2nd Cavalry is following me here. I'm just sort of observing the troops off in the distance, and I want their horse archers to follow us. And it does look like that's happening. You can see the number there next to their horse. When I'm hitting the Alt button, they're much closer to us than the rest of the Khuzait force. And the idea here is to draw off some of the attack of the enemy before their main vanguard, before their main cavalry charge hits our infantry. That way they don't have this supporting horse archer fire. Now I've got my cavalry in shield wall, and we're just going to kind of try to escape this situation, right? This is almost 200. Actually, it might be more than 200 horse archers, right? We're no match for this. But again, all we're doing with this is sort of distracting this enemy and pulling them out of the battle. We're effectively neutralizing them. Looks like some of their archers also pulled out, which is going to make their attack even less effective. Right. So now we're working our way back, and you can see over there on the left I've got infantry and cavalry, enemy infantry and cavalry attacking or getting ready to attack my infantry and my archers. Well, the problem with that is they're not supported. They don't have any horse archers now to support them, and so their attack is going to be very dismal, very weak compared to what it would have been if they all attacked together. So often in battles you'll see me hold fire until the enemy's close. Now that they're close, we're unleashing hell, right? Arrows are just pouring out from our protected archer ranks. We've got our infantry in a big line to slow down the cavalry charge, and now I've brought in the 2nd Cavalry that was dragged behind me, behind this cavalry, sort of trapping them in this death chamber. Now their horse archers are eventually going to catch up, right? I can only pull them out for about a minute or so. You can only delay the enemy so long. But that's bought us time. Look at the screen in the upper right. It's almost all enemy deaths, right? And that's partly because our firepower is concentrated and theirs is not. So a little change here also. I put the 6th Infantry into a square just to show you that there are alternative defensive modes to fighting against heavy cavalry. But now that the infantry is here, the enemy infantry is here, I'm bringing the 6th up over here next to me. The 1st Infantry is still in place, and we're forming a death chamber, right? This is a variation of the kill box. I have the 6th Infantry directly in front of me, and look at the enemy is firmly between these two flanks. Now that they are, we attack. This is the 1st, 6th, and 8th Corps all attacking, and I have the 2nd Cavalry being sort of drugged behind me. And this infantry is just absolutely pinched, like catching your finger in a door jamb, only these are troops, right? Caught in the vice. And the result is you know, a catastrophe for them. Probably a 10-to-1 kill ratio for their troops. Their horse archers are over there on the left. Every time I sort of keep an eye on that left area, I do see a bunch of horse archers. Right there they are over there at the edge of the border of the screen. We will deal with them in detail. That's a military term when you're fighting units in detail. Oh, by the way, I'm going to station the 2nd and 3rd Cavalry now in lines facing where the enemy archers are, right? You can be sure any enemy is going to be following in with archers. One of the best ways to neutralize that is to position cavalry in a shield wall facing them in a thin line. What that does is absorb a lot of arrows, and it lets us deal with these horse archers on our own, right? So again, to finish the thought, in detail basically means attacking your enemy sort of one unit at a time, right? If you had 3 guys that you had to fight in a bar, and you knew you couldn't take on all three, but you felt okay against each one of them, you would want to tell those guys, all right, wait a minute here, fellas. I'm going to fight you one at a time. I'm going to fight you in detail, and you're going to obviously have a much higher chance of success, right? Unless you're Jack Reacher or something like that, you want to fight your enemies one at a time. That's exactly what we're doing here, right? So I'm repositioning my archers. I've got my infantry sort of absorbing arrows up there as well, and you'll see me use these cavalry blocks to sort of push the enemy back. So it looks like the first enemy wave just completely dissolved, and they've pulled back, which is perfect because it's going to give us an opportunity to transition to foot. I'm actually going to continue to use the same strategy, which is to say I'm going to fight in detail. I'm going to try to effectively repulse their infantry and archers while we take out their horse archers. Khuzait horse archers always have to be your #1 concern, right? It says it's 150 plus. The last time I saw the number, it was almost 200 horse archers, and a lot of them are elite troops. That's the Khuzait noble line is the Khan's guard, and they're deadly troops. Not only are they really strong archers, but they break out their glaive and march amongst your infantry, and they will wreak havoc that way as well. They're heavily armored. They're very tough units. So if you want to focus on them and destroy them first. All right, so I just told you we're forming our cavalry into shield walls here. And these cavalry are not in an offensive situation. They are not attacking. I'm not going to be telling them to charge. This is a situation where a lot of people like to use their cavalry offensively. And there is obviously plenty of times where using your cavalry in offensive mode makes the most sense. Always take out banner bearers, by the way. You'll hear me say that almost every episode. But in this case, look at those cavalry. The sole job they're doing is pincushion boys, right? They are there in a big line. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to isolate the enemy horse archers over on the left there and keep this cavalry just defending, right? They're just standing there. They're just taking it like a man. Meanwhile, our other forces now are going to concentrate arrows. We're going to concentrate our attack on this enemy horse archers. I've got a good amount of ranged troops in my own battle, but I don't want them distracted by the enemy, and I don't want them being shot by the enemy archers. So I've got my cavalry in lines here in front. You can see all the arrows hitting them. You can see all the arrows at their feet. But behind them, my units are all focused on this. It's 180-something horse archers. So we're just hammering them with darts. We're throwing in javelins. The infantry is also in a purely defensive mode there. You see those guys? The first infantry is just holding up shields, right? I'm not going to try to fancily move them around and try to adjust for where the horse archers are. I'm just going to leave them in a shield wall while my archers just pound the fuck out of their horse archers. Right, you see the enemy is still sort of pinned behind my cavalry here. Now a good commander, non-artificial intelligence, like human, what they would do is they would come in very hard here and try to blow past my cavalry. They would understand that this is just a distractionary force, but alas, the AI doesn't quite have that capacity yet. And so these horse archers, you can tell by the death spam, right? This is a massacre. They are being systematically exterminated while their other forces aren't able to help them. I see I can see 134 archers. They've got quite a bit of archers past my cavalry here, but I have like this, this steel curtain effectively preventing a lot of their arrows from getting through. Some arrows are making it through. This is inevitable. I'm going to actually start moving in on their main forces here. And they're shooting downhill. They've got the tactical advantage here, but we just annihilated like 2/3 of their horse archers with very few losses. Moving the forces into a defensive situation here while I move up my units, right? So I've got my 2 cavalry units ahead and shield wall. The 6th, which has many sort of archers with no shields, I just put into a square. And what that does is the game will put all the guys with a shield on the outside of the square, protecting those people that don't have shields on the inside. Now we're just going to advance, right? Now we look like Walter Payton or some other elite running back running behind his incredible offensive line, and we're just going to barrel towards the enemy. I suppose I just dated myself with the Walter Payton comment. Any of you football fans out there now instantly know how old I am. Age in this case is beneficial, right? I still have enough mental acuity that I can help you young guys dominate the game, but also have a huge wealth of wisdom from literally decades of studying war tactics, famous battles, famous commanders from Napoleon, Frederick the Great, etc. So we're advancing up here. This cavalry came in, and so I'm putting my 6th again into a cavalry square. But frankly, we have enough forces here that we can just, especially since they're not really charging, they're kind of just waiting in slow, that we can just hack at these guys. And you can see, again, the upper right screen is something to pay attention to frequently. It's just a wall of green. Even though theoretically these cavalry should be doing pretty well, because we're using defensive tactics, because our troops are concentrated, they're the ones getting their arms chopped off, right? Look at how thick that infantry is, right? Their cavalry is just getting stuck in our infantry and just, torn to pieces. Their horses are turning into glue. Another little infantry block here, but it's small. Their archers do look like they're retreating. A lot of times you'll see the enemy regroup after they suffer serious losses. That's good AI, right? They're not going to just let their guys here get slaughtered. But when that's the case, right, you want to aggressively push up on those forces that are retreating. Oftentimes they'll be like this, holding their shield to and moving slowly. If you can get your forces in there, you can wreak havoc before they're allowed to regroup. But these are fucking tough units. 300 damage I did to that guy with the javelin. He didn't die. What that tells you is that these lords, I've used mods in the past that increase the power of the enemy lords to make the campaign more difficult. That tells you that these enemy lords are really powerful. They have like all the possible perks that you can even have to have that many hit points. So they have another group of horse archers here. We're going to set up a defensive front, but again, I wanted to show you two different approaches to the Khuzait. I could have just sat at that back wall the entire 30-minute video. Half the people would have X'd out and watched something more interesting. If you're in a desperate battle and you have to do that, that is an option. You can just sit at the back of the map and systematically whittle them down. Right? They'll bring in horse archer waves, but because they can't get behind you, it's not going to be as effective as it would be as if they could circle you. Here we're allowing us to be a little bit more vulnerable, right? We're riding in where their horse archers can get behind us, but we're going to use far superior tactics to dismantle the rest of this Khuzait force. Right? It looks like they have a big block of infantry and archers up ahead. They still have a lot of heavy cavalry, right? So I'm using my shield wall horses here. You just saw I just pulled them up. Their sole job is to rush up here, hold their shield in the front of the enemy like that, and what it does is it breaks up the enemy charge. Right? The enemy loses momentum, their charge gets distracted by these horses there, and they got 1 kill and we got it seems like 100. So their infantry and archers are in a nice defensive wall there, but static troops, once you get good at tactics, are dead troops. Any troops that are not moving, unless they're capable of some adaptive maneuvers, are basically fucking toast. Here, let's punch some guys. I always get fucked up when I pull my shield out and I don't have a weapon. I'll run around trying to punch guys in the battlefield. I guess maybe sometimes I do feel like Jack Reacher. All right, so we're going in here just to cause a little bit of carnage, a little bit more chaos while the troops get pulled up. You don't want to rush. I don't mention this enough. You don't want to rush your attacks simply because troops aren't in position. It happened multiple times in the Civil War. Civil War commanders got anxious. Their enemies were right in front of them, and instead of waiting for the plan to set up, they rushed their troops in and had a far less positive result than they could have had. So what you can tell I'm doing here, you'll see me do this a lot, is I'm forming a ring around the enemy. Right? I've got heavy shield walls facing their front, while I pull the 6th and 8th Corps. I think I also have the 5th Archers with me. 6th and 8th Corps, we're pulling them to the flank, and we're going to give this little group of Khuzait infantry and archers, a nice little flanking maneuver here. They're getting smart. They're being kind of aggressive, but they sent a small portion of their army, and with our 8th Corps, these guys are basically just troops for the slaughter. I mean, the definition of fodder troops. Okay, so I've got the 4th Archers on the far bank, and the enemy is retreating. Here's another perfect example. When the enemy does this and retreats to reform a new position, send in troops right amongst their midst. Right? I will literally send the 8th. You can see I'm actually physically sending them into battle. Right? I want them actually charging up into the enemy. Right? Look at how fast our guys are moving. I don't want them to reposition without at least losing troops doing so, right? When the enemy repositions like this, they're not shooting, right? Their archers are running instead of shooting. Tear their arms off, right? This is where you want to be aggressive, be violent when the enemy is running. And when they set up, right, then you can stop pursuing. You can stop pursuing, set up your flanking positionings, and continue the chase, right? This is sort of a dance you're going to play with the enemy. When they're running, you advance, and when they stop running and they turn to shoot like they are, I whip out my shield, and we're going to position again. We're going to position our troops in a big C shape, with the enemy sort of in the middle. If you can envision a C, the letter C, with the enemy in the middle of that C. That way we're surrounding them. And of course, surrounding them means our archers are going to be on all sides. Little cavalry wave here, little pathetic cavalry wave. Seems like they want to threaten our 8th Corps. But they have like the same chance of a junior varsity high school team against Michael Jordan's Bulls. We'll just do all the old age references here since I've already done it. I mean, these guys are just absolute slaughtered. Now again, I'm not attacking with my other forces. They're simply moving into formation. I don't actually want to attack with anybody while we're being distracted by this cavalry. Right? I want my 8th Corps to be a critical component of this last massacre. And so all I'm doing is advancing units. It looks like they actually are starting to charge my 1st Division, which is fine. Those guys are in shield wall. Those are my toughest infantry. They've got archers behind them. I've got archers now positioned above the enemy. And the 8th, 6th Corps following me, we're going to just wade into this fucking archer corps and just decimate this. So that's archers in front of us. They really should be retreating. This is either bad AI or a panicked enemy. They're running right at us, and that's going to result in lots of limbs and heads flying off for this enemy. Now we're in charge. Now the infantry's set to charge, and the massacre is on. Right, they're getting like 1 kill, like, you know, every 20 or 30 of ours. And you can, again, this is a really good demonstration of proper tactics, of how devastating it can be when you flank an enemy, when you move up aggressively on them. And again, so infantry coming in, we switch immediately to shield wall, cavalry coming in, and we absorb that charge. Right? They get 1 or 2 kills, we get 20. You see at this stage, I'm literally just sort of following this 1st infantry unit, right? There's another big wave of the enemy. So I'll pull some of my forces off to the right here, while that main line of infantry barrels in on their infantry, right? At this stage of the battle, the enemy's down to like tier 2, tier 3 infantry, and we have still high-level infantry. There's a big line of archers behind them. We'll deal with them soon. But in the meanwhile, with the 6th and 8th Corps, we're just going to wade into these archers. They're trying to reform. Don't let them. Cut down half of their men before they can even reform. My infantry are just plowing over their infantry up on that hill, right? I'm continuing to move my archers forward. You'll continue to see, it's almost like a blur because I do it so fast. Don't forget about your archers. If you are running 8 divisions like I do, one of the most important things is to constantly do a little mental check in your head. Okay, where did I put my cavalry? I put them on charge 2 minutes ago. Let me recall them so they're not all getting outnumbered, slaughtered, all that stuff. Where are my archers? Okay, let me make sure I'm pulling them up on my flanks, right? You need to be thinking about all your different archer, cavalry, and infantry divisions if you are going to run 8 divisions like this. At this stage, it no longer appears, actually, that the enemy is repositioning. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but when they're running sideways, diagonal like that, usually that in that case they're crying uncle. They've had enough slaughter. They've lost enough limbs and companions. That looks like they've got one more little last urge to fight here. Sometimes the enemy wavers back and forth between wanting to fight and wanting to run. Right? That means their morale is like right on the edge, teetering on the brink of failure. So one of the ways you can encourage that is go lop off a few more heads. The game's morale system functions very well. I wish it included like arms flying off. That would lower my morale, seeing friends of mine having their arms ripped off. But in this case, if you just charge in an enemy that's starting to waver, a lot of times, or cut a few heads off, a lot of times that'll be it for them. They will retreat. So hopefully this was a good example to people who have difficulty with Khuzait, or people especially who are fighting on foot that have found them very difficult to fight. through the use of squares, through the use of cavalry and shield wall, right? Consider these unorthodox tactics to then, annihilate their horse archers, fight their army in detail. Hopefully this has been a good example for you of what you're capable of doing against Khuzait. It's certainly much easier just to sit at the back of the map and systematically annihilate them, right, and have them just get sort of stuck on the edge of the map. But if you want to play the game sort of like real life and do what we just did here, you can see you could still have a lot of success as long as you're using proper tactics. I want to say thank you to all my subscribers. The channel is growing beautifully. I'm just an old military war dog. I have no intent to monetize this channel. I'm just here enjoying the community, enjoying the tactical discussion. It's very pleasurable for me to teach some of the younger people watching. Thank you for subscribing, liking, commenting, all that good stuff. Look at the kill ratio, 1800 to 120. Anyways, thanks again. I appreciate all the subscribers, comments, even critiques. I don't mind hearing critiques as well. If you think I can improve the channel, try different tactics. If you still can't hear me over the sounds of battle and music, please let me know. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you next time.